Henry's daughter, Sophie, met Sandra, who looked exactly like her, at school and spent time with her. They were convinced they were twin sisters. Henry was shocked when he met Sandra and her mother and decided to find out what had happened. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Henry moved from Texas to Los Angeles when his daughter, Sophie, turned 7 years old, and she was about to start second grade. Okay, here we are. Your new school, Sophie. Are you excited? He asked his daughter at the drop-off. I think so, Sophie responded, twirling her fingers around her skirt in nervousness. What if no one likes me? They will. You just have to be nice to everyone, and if someone is mean to you, you go the other way. No starting fights, okay? Henry added and kissed her forehead. Sophie waved goodbye and entered school. She located her classroom immediately, and everyone else was already inside. But all the kids' eyes widened, and a few even gasped when they saw her. She stopped right at the door and looked around in confusion. Her new classmates started turning their heads back and forth between her and another girl sitting at the back. She tried to get a peek and spotted a blonde head. Suddenly, one boy yelled, "It's Sandra's clone." That's when Sophie saw the girl at the back of the classroom, and she gasped at the sight. The girl looked just like her. Sandra stood up and stared at the new girl with her mouth gaping open. "Wow! We look like twins," she exclaimed and smiled widely. Sophie immediately felt at ease and grinned at the girl too. "Yeah. But why?" "I don't have any sisters," she responded. "Me neither. It's only my mom and me," Sandra said and jumped towards Sophie, holding her hand. "Come sit with me." They spent a few minutes talking, and other kids approached them too. Then the teacher, Miss Carr, came in. "I believe we have a new student today, Sophie Douglas. Come say hello," their teacher said and suddenly gasped a small, "Oh. Miss Carr, she's just like Sandra," one kid said as Sophie made her way to the front of the classroom. "Hello, my name is Sophie. I love books and going to the beach with my dad. We moved here from Texas, and I'm so excited to make new friends," the girl said and smiled at everyone. Miss Carr clapped as the rest of the class followed. "That's great, Sophie. And it looks like you have a twin in our class. That's so cool. You can go sit down now." "Okay, today we're going to learn about frogs." Miss Carr started her lesson immediately. Sophie and Sandra played throughout the day with all of Sandra's friends. They bonded faster than anyone could have imagined. When school ended, Sophie told her dad everything about Sandra and how they looked the same. After hearing all about her new friend all week, Henry was curious to see her and decided to call Sandra's mom to talk about things. They arranged a playdate and decided to meet up at McDonald's a few days after Sophie's first day at her new school. When Sandra and her mother, Wendy, walked in, Henry's jaw went slack. He couldn't believe her daughter had not been exaggerating. The woman also gasped after seeing Sophie. "Oh my God. Hi. You must be Sophie. Sandra has been talking to me about you all this week. You really do look like twins," Wendy exclaimed with a big smile. The girls went to the playground, and the adults could finally speak. "Hello, I'm Henry. It's nice to meet you," Henry said, shaking Wendy's hand. They sat down at one of the booths and talked some more. She repeated the sentiment. "Wow, I just can't believe it. I've read of counterparts, but this has to be something else," Wendy commented as they watched the girls playing. "What do you mean?" "Well, Sandra doesn't know this yet, but I adopted her." "Is Sophie yours biologically?" "Yes. I mean, my ex-wife, Irene, discovered she was pregnant after we separated and had her. We co-parented, but she died a year ago, and so now, I have full custody. I was worried for Sophie, you know," Henry blabbered. "She just lost her mother, and I had to move here for work. It's too much change. But Sandra has been a godsend." Sophie has been smiling all week and talking about everything they have in common. "I can't thank your daughter enough. Where did you move from?" "Texas. We lived in Dallas," Henry replied. Wendy hummed and placed her chin on her hand. "What?" Henry wondered, frowning at the woman. "I'm reluctant to say this, but I believe Sandra was born in Texas too," Wendy revealed, wetting her lips with her tongue in hesitancy. "I'll have to recheck her birth certificate. But is there any chance your late ex-wife had twins?" "I don't. I wasn't there with her because of business. But no. It can't be. I returned a week after she gave birth. She had already left the hospital, and I met Sophie in her home. So, there's no way this could happen, Henry replied, his eyes blinking fast, trying to think. Were you and her in a good place at the time? What do you mean? Well, if she felt like you wouldn't be around, maybe she thought having 2 kids was too much, Wendy suggested as carefully as she could. So, you're saying she might have given one kid up and kept the other? Henry asked, still not believing that Irene would have given one of their children up for adoption. We were not good together, and that's why we broke up. But this is just, ugh. I don't know what else to say. Is there any way we could find out? Wendy wondered once again. I guess I could call the hospital, and we could check things, Henry mumbled, still in shock and running his fingers through his hair. Just then, the girls came back and said they were hungry, so this conversation would have to continue another day. A few days later, he took Sophie to stay at Wendy's house and traveled back to Texas. He talked to hospital staff and asked around as much as possible. Finally, one kind nurse took pity on him and discovered Irene had given birth to 2 babies. Unfortunately, Henry would never know why she made the tough decision to give one baby up, but he suspected it was his fault. I left her alone to give birth, and I wasn't there for most of her pregnancy. This is my doing. She probably knew she was having twins and didn't tell me. But there was nothing he could do about the past now. He could only go forward and try to make amends. When he returned, he and Wendy got a DNA test for Sandra, confirming their suspicions. But Henry made it clear that Wendy was the girl's mother. He would never try to separate them. The adults sat down with the girls and told them everything as best they could, which meant explaining to Sandra that she was adopted. But the twins cheered in delight and hugged each other, chanting, "We're sisters. We're sisters." Henry and Wendy could only laugh at them, glad that they were so happy. They had to navigate this tricky situation because Henry wanted to be a father to Sandra, but Wendy didn't know how she would fit into Sophie's life. In the end, they decided to co-parent as if they both were their legal parents, and it turned out amazingly. The girls transitioned into this new normal better than they did, and it was perfect. One night, Sophie said something that shocked Henry. "Dad, why don't you marry Wendy? Then she could be my mom too." "Oh honey, that's complicated. Wendy and I are just good friends," he responded. "I'll never forget my mom. But I like her. I think she could be good for you too," Sophie insisted. Henry smiled. "We'll see." But it was like his daughter predicted the future. Eventually, he and Wendy started dating. They got married when the girls turned 12, and they were both bridesmaids.